Okay, so now we're going to look at the spandex material, and I have found here some pretty interesting diagrams that show a difference between spandex cotton. It's sort of like there's a weave with material to it, and um, this is right before it becomes synthetic stuff. And I believe these weaves are also somewhat synthetic. I believe that there's some kind of stretchy material in the fibers. I haven't totally read about it yet, but you can see clearly from a standard material weave versus the spandex material weave the difference in the weave. This has all these loops in it, and these loops allow um, for stretching because that's extra material. The extra material is now dormant, and then it eventually stretches out with the muscle mass or with whatever our actions are. But it still does the same thing. It creates a pattern. It's just now the pattern is a dynamic pattern. It can be pushed and pulled a little bit. I also found, interestingly enough, this other diagram, which is interesting because here it says no real weave pattern, more of just fibers melted together. And so that's interesting because I don't know if I've actually myself seen any of this material. When I was a runner, I had the other material for the running pants that we wore. It was a woven material, and this stuff I don't really remember seeing. But if it's anything like what it says, it's probably a lot like latex, which is just basically a rubber suit for the most part, stretchy rubber. And this says almost like rubber, so it's an attribute that's almost like rubber. Interesting too, when burned, it has a chemical odor. That's very safe. But anyway, the spandex material goes anywhere from a woven pattern to this base right here, which is like 6 degrees away from becoming latex. When looking at this material, it's very tight fit on the body, and in some cases, like with this, the material is a little bit heavier, and you can see much larger folds up here around the waist. This actually has 3 different densities of material. It has a heavier material and then a very thin material across the thigh, which is more transparent. You can see the skin through that. And then a different kind of spandex weave on the white. I believe the weave here is different for the stretch over the thigh versus the rest of it, which is the body panels, and then down here on the leggings that wrap over the foot, that's a different density of material. Regardless, you can kind of see that with anything tight to the body, you're going to get very minimal folding happening. The pipe folds are only going to go up to, and you can see here why I was mentioning before stitch lines are important. The pipe folds pretty much go right up to the stitch line. And these stitch lines are really crazy. They're not like pants where there's 2 pathways, with a double stitching. This is very intricate stitching, and it becomes a very definable end point for the material before the next panel begins. We also have bodysuits like this. Here, the upper half of the suit is a little bit looser on her body, but everywhere else from the breast downward you can see is very tight to the body. So when it's loose, the pipe folds that you see are very definitive. They are absolutely pipe folds, but very small because the material weave is really tight and really thin on the stitch count. Then we also have some of the material that has a shiny weave to it, so it'll have a little bit more reflectivity. But you can also see that this reflection is diffused. There's speckles in it. It's not perfectly shiny, as we will see here pretty soon with the latex material. And again, where it's really loose, you can see the pipe folds, but all of the pipe folds are much smaller, very small, and they go from the tension points over to the next tension point, or a stitch line. In this case, the stitching isn't as intense as that previous paneling that we were looking at on the other leggings. and that's the same with the stitch lines on these. So the folds will have a tendency to go most of the way around especially in the legs, most of the way around the cylinder form of the body. And then finally here, one last example. Here all of the material is much tighter to the fit, and the places where folds are going to occur are where creases occur in the body, where there's something on underneath. It looks like this person might be wearing another like tank top underneath, possibly because on both sides there's sort of like a little lip or a strap-like look is. And then down in areas like where the elbows are bending as well. Because the arms tend not to have full fingers to them, they tend to end along the wrist. You're going to see a much looser fit around the wrists. Also, when the material changes size, if it does have the hands as a part of the whole body suit, then it's going to change size and you'll end up with a couple folds right around the wrists. But as well, when you're wearing things like belts and gloves that are cinched down, those cinch lines can cause some looseness just above them in the material, and so you're going to see more of those types of folds. But the folds are going to be minimal, and they're going to be minimized down to just the areas where the material comes to an end or it's right next to a major bending point in the body: the elbows, the wrists, the shoulders, the knees, the ankles, the hips. Then we have latex, and latex is basically rubber for the most part. Here's a good example of it where you can see it from both sides. Not the best material for wearing on your body for a very long period of time, as some of these items we're going to look at here. But no less, it's another material that we are going to be working with. And as you can see from the way that the material sits on the body, you can kind of almost tell that the body can barely breathe underneath this stuff. It's pretty heavy material as far as porousness goes. It doesn't really have much of any. And it tightens down on the body, so you better be in pretty good shape too, or it's going to show and share every little bump and lump that you have on your body. But no less, what it is it's a plastic-like material. We can see the surface has reflection to it, and if the reflection is tight enough as these are right here and as this one is right here, it'll show you the exact shape of the light that's shining upon it. I'm not sure if the other two examples have that. Yeah, this one does. You can see the square light on her, the square studio light on her. And over here, the same thing. You can see the big square lamps that they have in the studio. Because it's a shiny material, you can also see how when directly lit, it does have a slightly lighter quality to it, but very much like velvet. Because it's glossy, the brightest light is actually going to come from the edges of the material and then the highlight, where the portions that are facing towards us are going to be less brightly lit than the sides of the body, because there's more atmosphere with the adjacent planes, and there's less of that with the direct view that we have parallel to the surface. So like velvet, in this case, it absorbs light a little bit more, or it doesn't show you as much light as the sides of the bodies are going to. And again, it's because of the gloss. This is a high gloss surface. This is not a matte surface. A much flatter surface will give you light more directly towards the light source, where this gloss now rolls it off to the sides. Also, because of and this is a little bit tricky to understand at first, but glossiness means that there's a varnish, and if there's varnish, there's a layer. And when we look at material in profile view, we see the material here, and we see the gloss layer just above it. And that gloss layer starts becoming a reflector. There's a thing in water called the Fresnel effect. And the closer you are to things looking down, it's spelled Fresnel, if you ever want to look it up, the Fresnel effect. We're looking down at things here and we can see into the water's surface. But the more we get out this way, the more the water is going to become a reflector. And so the more adjacent the surface is to your eyes, or the more perpendicular it gets to your eyes, or actually, the more perpendicular it gets to your eyes, the more reflective it becomes to whatever the surroundings are. In this case, with water, it's the sky. With the body, it's going to be these walls over here and over here. Now, if the walls are darker, it might very well look brighter in the middle. It's all atmosphere and space related. So if the space that's surrounding the model is lighter, the sides will be brighter automatically because of that glossy effect. So this is something where you can kind of see that the folds are non-existent or barely existent. Even the fold right here, it's just one crease across there, and there's a couple little minor pipe folds above and below. But for the most part, the folds that occur in here are pinching points or pinching into the skin more rather than sticking out because of how tight this material is to the body. So folds are going to be a little bit trickier on this. I would just basically say that for a spandex pipe fold that's like this big, and I'm talking like we're really close up, latex folds are going to be this big to it. They're going to be even smaller because there's less material to go around because of how airtight the material is to the body. And whatever little material there is more because of the tension and relaxation on the opposite side of the tension point. But that material, because it's still going to be pulled upon in every direction, will bite into the skin a little bit more than it'll stick off of the skin. So latex is a little bit trickier, and it's not very often that we use it. But you could also think of this just like plastic suits. So if you're going to make like space armor that's really tight to the body, that's like some super material, this is the one material that we do have here in existence that could emulate that to some extent. So I would certainly use this as a gauge for how to make that stuff. But by no means are you going to use this quite frequently, because how often do you see people wearing plastic all over their entire body? Anyway, this is more aimed towards costuming and special needs groups. But regardless, it's another material property that we're going to be studying here. On to the lace and the pattern.